Hello, and welcome to the Monday Chthonia live stream. I'm Breach Burke. Today, I'm going to talk about actually a couple of different things on this particular live stream. I'm going to give you a couple of updates as to what's going on here with me, with Chthonia, with what's going on around here. I'm going to make a sort of brief diversion into something I read today on X, which I don't spend a whole lot of time over there. But there's this page I follow called Weird Wiltshire, and there was a conversation that went on there that I thought, it's kind of on my mind, so I was going to just kind of diverge into that as a little bit of a digression. And then my main topic of today is probably going to have to do with the idea of animosity and its connection to the idea of the Animus. It's... We'll see how all of that flows together or not. Somehow I have this thing for being able to make connections between things that somehow seem like they don't really go together. So, we'll see how it goes this time. So first of all, updates. So I've been really busy with a lot of stuff. I have another channel in addition to the Chthonia channel on YouTube called Liminal Tarot, where I do readings, and I used to just do one reading a week and upload it, and now I do them by sign because I get a lot more traffic that way. And people had indicated, I don't know, it was kind of a split between people. Some people just liked the one reading a week, one general reading. Other people said, no, I like the one for my individual sign. So that's fine, except that doing 12 signs takes a lot of time. So I end up trying to break it up during the week and say, all right, when I get 3, I'll record them. Recording them actually isn't a big deal. Uploading them, for some reason, transferring them from my iPhone to my laptop, transferring them from the Photos app, which is where iPhone records everything, to my to the folder I have for this stuff, because otherwise, no matter what, it takes an eternity to load up things up to YouTube. So I finally got, I think, those videos. Even though I was pretty much up to date with everything, it took so long for everything to load that I had to upload stuff this morning. And it was literally just an hour ago that I got that uploaded. It took like 3 hours to upload 3 videos. It was ridiculous. So I had those kinds of issues that end up eating into a lot of my time, because when my computer resources are being used for one thing, I can't use it for something else, at least not effectively. So I've been dealing with that, and I've been dealing with the mice in my house. This is an old house. Those of you can see behind me, this is the house that was built, by American standards, it's old. It's built in the 1850s. And this is the new part, the old part of the house. The new part with plumbing is in the back. So I have this weird setup in here where my shutoffs from my bath and my shower are actually in the kitchen ceiling. So I have a little trap door there. And so far this week, I think I have put 7 mouse traps, and literally I'll put a trap, and these are the kind that they close the door so you don't, blood doesn't splatter everywhere. I'm sorry, it's gross, I don't mean to do that. And yes, and those of you who say, no, you should use a humane trap, yes, I used to do that. But the problem is, humane traps are very expensive, they don't fit in most of the places where the mice are, and they easily rust out and don't work properly. And then I also don't really drive very far, so I would drive them to the university where I worked, and then I'd just dump them off near the student center, so they could go, feast on the dumpster or whatever, but they had to risk the campus cats that were around. But nonetheless, they were miles away from my house. And I don't want to have to get into the car every time I have this situation. So unfortunately, because I feel like they're getting very destructive now, whereas before I just was kind of like, whatever, they're there. I've had to do that, and literally I will lay a trap, 5 minutes later I hear this tear, and I'm like, how, didn't you just see like somebody went in there and didn't come out again, and now you're like, why don't I go do the same thing? I was kind of hoping that, a couple of them would disappear and it would scare them off, but no. But I always tend to forget that mice are not really that bright. I remember when I lived in my first apartment after I split with my husband, and down in Clinton, and I had 4 cats at that time, and a mouse got in from the front, and this mouse, it was in the middle of the night, I woke up and just saw all 4 of my cats looking like they were having a ritual. They were all just standing staring at this mouse, and I was just like, for fuck's sake, and I get up, and the only one, of course, because there were 2 boys and 2 girls, and it was the girls who had to, of course, catch it. They kept catching it, and they kept putting it in front of the boys, like, okay, now what do you do? Like, they're trying to train them, and the boys just thought, like, they would just slap it like it was a giant bug or something. Like, they didn't know. I mean, I don't know. People know in the cat kingdom, it's the females that actually do the hunting, and they teach the males. So they were trying to teach them to no avail. So, it just, mouse would get away, and then it would come back. Yeah, I would rescue it, throw it outside, and it would come back every single time. And then I came in from some event late at night, and I found it dead in the middle of my floor. I was like, I tried. Let's just put it this way. I've tried. So anyway, enough about that. That's been something that's been occupying my time, and I've been doing a whole lot of work for my spiritual coaching business. I just actually got my certification in spiritual coaching from the it's school in England. I want to say it's called the Center for Excellence. I feel like there's another word in there that I'm missing. In any case, they had a course that I wanted to do, and so I did that and passed it with distinction. Yay, me. So that's something. So I'm trying to work on getting stuff together for transition life coaching, which is the other side of what I do. I mean, Chthonia is more what I do in terms of teaching, podcasting, sharing things, my publications and stuff. Transition life coaching is more what I do one-on-one. It's mentoring. So, and what I do for mentoring doesn't always interest people who are doing the Chthonia thing. A lot of people are interested in Chthonia just because they're interested in the dark feminine, they're interested in archetypes, they're interested in, dark goddesses and magic, they're interested in whatever the reason is that they're interested. It doesn't always dovetail with that, so I keep them separate. So anyway, I've been very, very busy lately, and also taking, as I'd mentioned last live stream, that my mother has been recovering from a broken pelvis and broken hip. But she's getting around pretty good. She's not supposed to be. We found out she was climbing stairs and doing stuff, vacuuming the basement. Why does somebody need to vacuum the basement? It's a concrete floor. Anyway, she's driving my sister and me nuts, but that's not really new. Nonetheless, when she gets to a point where she can drive again, then we probably won't do that. But for right now, we're cleaning her house and doing her laundry and all that fun stuff just to keep her on top of things. So, so things are just, like I said, every day very busy. I've got, client work, other stuff that's going on. Chthonia itself, the podcast that came out today was for Bridget, which is also my name. So I only say it's my namesake's podcast. Of course, I'm named for her and obviously not the other way around. That would be weird. So it's quite an interesting podcast because one of the things that I noticed, I'm aware of Goddess Breach. And of course, there's also a whole lot on St. Bridget of Kildare, or who's connected to that, who seems to have all the same powers mysteriously as Goddess Breach. But I didn't spend a whole lot of time on Bridget of Kildare because there's a ton of those stories. I actually today took a whole course in graduate school on. I think ostensibly it was a course on St. Patrick, but this ended up being, it was like a Celtic Christianity course. Okay, so this was kind of looking at all the aspects of Celtic Christianity. And so, I read a lot of the original, medieval biographies of like St. Patrick and St. Bridget and all of that. And I'm doing a whole series on Christian saints, Christian mystics, particularly the female mystics, because this is something that people have expressed an interest in. But generally speaking, that's not really a topic that I get too into in this podcast, and I'm more interested in the archaic pagan versions of these saints, rather than the later versions. And people who know me, of course, know that I have an aversion to St. Patrick, so or St. Padraig, or however if you in Ireland, that's how you would say it. So I will not get on my soapbox about that here, because I think it annoys some people, to be honest. But I'm not a fan. Okay, as a Morrigan, I guess I'll use the word devotee. That's not kind of exactly what it is, but as a Morrigan devotee, I'm not a fan of St. Patrick. So and speaking of the Morrigan, Phantom Queen, I got an update on that. I spoke to Jessica at Theon. And she had told me that, we're kind of be getting into the correction stages and editing and, me getting paid for it and all that kind of stuff in the next couple of months. When it's actually going to come out, it was originally supposed to be early 2024. They seem to be a little delayed with their publishing schedule. I know there's a Lilith book that's coming out, not by me, but there's one that was going to be the next one to come out, and they were looking at, I think, December of last year, and now it looks like it's been pushed to June. So not sure why, but, whatever, things happen. And then whether mine's going to be the next one or not is, they said it could be between that and another book as to which one comes out next. So I think the earliest at this point I can expect it could be either late summer or early fall. But as they update me on the schedule, because I'll have to hear from them on not only copy, any edits I have to make, but also, looking at proofs, probably looking at other stuff, and then that'll be the point at which I'll know exactly when it's going to be published. So it's going to be in progress, at least this month. We should be getting on to having them look over the drafts and decide what they need me to change. So, okay. And the other thing is, I spent a writer's retreat at the end of December, the beginning of January, and I'm going to be looking at trying to get those works put together in some form that I like and published. I am going to probably pull Morrigan Timelines back because I want to redo the way that whole series is done. So those of you who have it, as it is, great, but I'm going to rework it. I don't necessarily like the beginning and the end of it, so I do want to do some reworking, and with the new material that I've done, I feel like it'll fit together a little better. There was a conference that's coming up, Imaginative Landscapes, and it has to do with aqueous liminal spaces, like water spaces. So that conference was brought to my attention. I think it's happening in England, but it is a remote conference, like it's virtual, so I'm probably going to put in a proposal for that. I mean, obviously, they'll either accept the proposal or not, but I'm gonna put in one for that. And I'm also, my friend Ellen mentioned something that Lucy Pierce was doing. What was it called? The Womancraft Compendium, I think it's called, which has these articles about different aspects of femininity with respect to patriarchy and so forth. And she had suggested that I might want to, get in on that collection as well. So, I mean, those are both things that I'm interested in trying to do. Ultimately, it's going to be up to the people who are organizing it whether or not I'm accepted for doing that, or whether what I'm doing fits in with what they want, or if they have too many submissions, or these different things can happen. So we'll see. If that comes to pass, then I will let you know. But I'm a little excited. I mean, academic writing can be a little bit tedious because of all the research and all the things you have to do and all the formalities that you have to go through. But I kind of miss doing it a little bit, so it'll be fun to do something new like that. Okay, so the other thing I was going to talk about today, I scan my phone in the morning when I get up, obviously, probably like most people. And when I get these notifications on X, and I started following this page called Weird Wiltshire, and it's actually a website, it's a blog, somebody's travel blog, I think. And today what he was talking about was this place, a place in Avebury, or near Avebury, called the West Kennet Long Barrow. Now, some of you may have heard of this, and I'm sure I've mentioned it in different places before, because whenever I'm in the UK, and now, not every time, it depends, like this last trip, I did not go out to Wiltshire or towards Marlborough at all on this trip. It's a good thing I didn't plan to, because apparently it was largely flooded a lot of the time, so it's just as well that I didn't. But oftentimes I will try to stay in the town, or the village, really, of Avebury. Avebury is a very small village. If you've not heard of it, it's basically a village that is built inside a very old stone circle. I think they've estimated it's about 5,000 years old. And it's one of those, it's not like Stonehenge where you've got to get your tickets and take the bus and go up, and you go up in a group and you can't actually touch it. I mean, I guess if you're a druid on the solstice, you can go in, but it's very limited. They don't let people just go in and hang out in the stones anymore. Because people were destroying them. So, fair enough, I guess. I think it's National Trust that probably runs all of that. It's either them or English Heritage, maybe it's both. But National Trust also has they have a car park, and they have like a whole center in Avebury as well. But Avebury is largely a town. It's got the pub, it's got the Red Lion, it's got 2 metaphysical shops, It's got some houses, not a whole lot, but there are some houses. One of them is the B&B where I usually stay because I like being able to. I like to sleep in a room where I can look at the stones like out my bedroom window. That's a thing for me. And weird stuff always happens when I go there. But this particular blog post today was interesting because it was a thread on Twitter, X, whatever the heck it's called now. It was basically a post about that area, about Avebury, about Silbury Hill, which is right nearby, and then the West Kennet Long Barrow, which is down the road. I mean, there's other places. There's a sanctuary that's a little bit farther beyond that. And then, of course, the Avebury itself has the Avenue of Stones. So even just in that area, and there are more things around. There's Windmill Hill. There's other places that are that kind of have this nature to them. They're the megalithic sites. They're also associated, fairy sightings, UFO sightings, things like that. People tend to go there. So it does tend to give Avebury a reputation. Yeah, you kind of get two types, I think. Then you get the National Trust types that go there, who are there interested in the historical aspect. And then you have people who are the more New Agey type who come in. Hence the reason there's 2 metaphysical stores there that seem to do pretty well. And from my time there, there is usually a variety of people of varying stripes. I mean, the locals hate most of them who come in. When the Red Lion used to be more of a pub where people hung out and here and be like, they had nothing good to say about the people who came in for like equinox, for solstice, or for they didn't really have very kind words for those people. But you do meet there is all types there. And who are interested in all aspects of that type of thing. My interest in that type of thing, I don't consider myself a New Agey person, or New Age. Some people would, because they would just take everything that's not either science or traditional religion and lump it in that category, and that's just not accurate. That's not how that plays out. The things that I deal with have to do a lot with my own experiences, my own esoteric practices. That I've done for years now. This has been a thing of mine. People call it having a spiritual bent. I don't even know if I like that phrase, but that's the phrase people use. And so I've always kind of had that. But for me, there's a lot out there that's absolute nonsense. And then there's other things that I say, okay, well, if I keep an open mind to something and participate in something, and it seems and something happens, then I can't just write off as something. Then okay, I'm going to probably take it a little bit more seriously. And if I have enough experience with something, then to me, I'm just like, okay, well, that's certainly going to be part of what I think is real, or is part of my belief system. Whether it is part of anybody else's, it's up to them. I mean, I don't feel a need to convert anybody to my way of thinking about things. But he wrote about the West Kennet Long Barrow, and this was quite interesting because he had talked about his little trip out to Avebury, brought his dogs, and was going to take a walk up to the Barrows, and I guess he had not been there as of that point. Now, I've been to the Barrows several times, and the Barrows there's a walking path. I remember when I was staying in a B&B that had been down the road a little ways, the owners there had given me a map, and they said, if you go through the National Trust car park, across the street, there's a field. You walk down that field to where the stream is. You hang a right. Silbury Hill's right on your left. So you walk right up into the Silbury Hill parking lot. There was a time when you could walk around, but they seem to have got rid of that. I guess they don't like people walking through that field. And then you come out to kind of the Swindon Road on the other side, and then you can walk down. There's a sidewalk, and then where that ends, you cross over to the other sidewalk, and that takes you down to the West Kennet Long Barrow parking lot. And it doesn't cost anything to go to any of these places. You just go and you can look at them. So I would climb up into the Barrows, and I remember the first couple times I went up into the Barrows, and this is what this person was talking about, was the fact that they would go in and you literally get hit with this wall of stay out. There's something there that does not want you in there. And he was talking about how you go into the first recess, then there's a second dark recess, and then there's a third. Now, mind you, it's not really that far back, but when you look at it you get behind the entrance stone and you look in there, it looks like it goes way back, but it doesn't. They haven't even excavated all of it. And I forget how many skeletons they found in just that piece. I want to say the number was 25 or something. It was a lot. So you walk in there, and yeah, the first time I went up there, I was like, okay, I really need more preparation to walk into this place. Because there's this idea of the Barrow Guardian. Now, or, if you want to use Tolkien's terms, the Barrow Wights, right? The Guardians of the Barrow. And supposedly people say that they see a man who they assume to be a druid in some kind of white robe who stands up, looks east, comes out of the barrow, and then comes back in again. My experience of what's in there strikes me as actually female, kind of very aggressive female, but female. And the first time I went in, I was just like, whoa. So the next time I came back, usually people bring offerings or something when they go back, so that's what I did. And so the second time it was, I made it all the way to the back of the chambers of the barrow, and then there's like a light in the ceiling. Like they have like a little window in the top that's been put in. And that was okay. I mean, it was better once I did that. It was less contentious feeling. And I've gone back several times, and I feel like I connect with whatever. The first time you walk at the door, you feel that, and then I'm just kind of like, it's me, and then they're just like, oh, okay. It's like, whatever is there, I feel like has gotten used to who I am, which I guess says that I've been there quite a lot. But I don't necessarily have that there is that trepidation. But I was just really interested to read about how so many people have that experience when they go to the door. They walk in there and they're literally hit with this wall. Because part of me was just thinking like, okay, well, it's dark in there. Maybe it's just like when you're walking into a dark space where you can't see what's back there, like you kind of go, ooh, like you spook yourself a little bit. But no, this is apparently a lot of people, even people who go into caves and different things, are freaked out by whatever's there. Some people have actually been attacked. Some people said they've been grabbed by hands. Some people thought they got punched in the stomach. I was like, whoa, that has not happened to me. But I can tell you that the first time I went there was in 2019. And just before I started this podcast, as a matter of fact. It was literally like 2 months before I was getting ready to begin Chthonia podcast, which I remember I started on May the 20th. And I went in, and I do geomancy, and I do things like that. And so I connected with who was there. I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time or really bother who was in there, because I don't feel like they wanted to be bothered. That's something I kind of always felt. But I remember that I did get a kind of message from there. And basically it was a warning. It was like, your life's about to turn it. And sure enough, I think I was there in March, by August, my entire life had turned to shit. So, people who complain about the early podcasts and the lack of editing that I have on them and stuff, which, okay, yeah, I mean, it can be annoying, fair cop, but that's part of the reason that I didn't, because literally, I think literally by August I was having a nervous breakdown. I mean, literally, because of all the things, and I'm not going to get into what was happening there. I'm sure I've talked about it in other places, but it's really, it was, so that was just kind of interesting, and I've had some similar experiences where I'll go there, and then it's like, I get some kind of information, and then I leave, and then it turns out, the kind of information I got. So it's weird. This is kind of this weird relationship to whatever's there, but I just thought it was really interesting, and I was writing back and forth to the person a little bit about it, because apparently, a lot of people write in and have that experience. So that was just kind of a weird diversion this morning. I was like, and kind of makes me want to go back there, but I always want to go back there. There's a really wonderful B&B right in town called Silbury House, and it's the only one in town, and it's run by Donna and Steve Byatt, who Donna Byatt owns elements of Avebury, which is, if you get off the bus, that's the store you get out right in front of, and it's right across from the Red Lion. That she owns that store, and her and her husband both own the store, and they own the house. They live in the house there, and they rent rooms out as a B&B. But they're frequently, as you would imagine, very booked up, and it's not cheap to stay there. So I never usually stay for maybe the maximum has been 3 days. And also I don't usually have a car when I'm out there, so it's only I stay for a couple of days for whatever, and then I move on. Although Donna said, you should really stay for like a week. And I'm like, well, one of these days. So again, there's so many people who want to stay there that I basically have to, a couple of, like 2 or 3 months in advance, I have to email and say, hey Steve, like what do you have open in this month? I don't even say in what week. And then he'll look at the calendar and he'll say, well, I have this date and this date. And then I'm like, can I have my room? It's like, yep, great, we're all set. Because there's a couple of rooms in there. But my favorite one is the one that overlooks what I think is the Cove Stone. I could have that wrong because I always get myself messed up. But there is 2 huge megaliths like right out the window. So that's where I always want to stay. So it's just interesting that came up today. And that's not entirely related to what I was talking about, although it does kind of, I was just kind of thinking about the whole New Age fluff narrative that tends to go along with the place. But it really is something a lot more profound than that, and I can say that there's not too many places, and I've been all over Britain. I've been a lot of places around here. I've been to places that allegedly have certain magical ties or certain ancient ties. I've been places in Ireland too have been quite remarkable. That's probably the only other place I could say for now, like where I've gone to places where I've been like, whoa, okay. But Avebury, it just seems like there's something, and I'm not going in expecting it. I don't expect anything to happen. It's just like, okay, I'm going to go on my walk. I'm going to visit. I kind of know what happens up in the Barrow, and that's about it. But all kinds of weird stuff has happened. And I talk about it in some of the courses that I teach, but we won't get into that now. But I do have quite a few interesting stories about being in Avebury, at least from my perspective. Maybe other people are not that excited by it, but for me, it was just like really weird. So, okay, so yeah, the thing I wanted to talk about today, and this came up because I'm probably going to also talk about this when I do. I'm going to be doing a live stream for my other channel, which is Transition Life Coaching on Instagram, probably tomorrow. And I'm going to be talking about the same thing, but I'm going to be talking about it from a different perspective, because obviously that's a coaching page, and I'll be talking about it more about in the context of dream work. Okay. But this is, okay, so I had a very, very odd dream. I had a friend visit, a high school friend, come and visit. She was here on Saturday, and we were talking about certain people who we had gone to school with in the past. I'm not going to get into names of places or people or anything like that. But we had been talking about that, and one particular individual from our high school who she's known for a long time, somebody who I'd been friends with growing up, but at some point I had unfriended this person and just didn't want anything to do with them anymore. And apparently he said something to her and said, hey, Breach unfriended me and I don't know why. And her response was, well, she's still around. You can message her and find out. And for me, it wasn't just one thing. It was kind of a bunch of things, and culminating in his rant about what horrible, murderous people, women who have abortions are. And I just finally was like, all right, I am done with you, because if I actually respond to this, I'm going to go nuclear on you, and you're not going to know what the hell hit you. So I just thought, no, the safer thing is to just unfriend and walk away, because it's not worth engaging. It's just not. It's not something I want to spend energy on. But interestingly, after she was there, I had a dream that night, and a dream had nothing to do with with this person. I mean, they were not in the dream. It was more of a dream where I was with 4 people, and I was, and I don't know. It's like really weird because I fell asleep within the dream. Was that weird? But it was like, I guess there was like 2 people who were sort of clients and 2 people who were Reiki practitioners. And of course I was one of them. And so when I woke up, the other 2 people, this one other woman, it was all women. So one woman was working on this other woman, and I had somebody on my own Reiki table, and I was like, oh, I should be up doing Reiki for her. And it turned out this was a friend that I used to work with. She's an older woman who's in her 70s now, who I used to work with, and I was just like, oh, okay, this is so and so. And I was doing Reiki on her, and for some reason after that we decided we wanted to go out to breakfast. Okay. And we got up and left this place, and we were walking out to wherever it was we were planning to go. But it was really, really dark out. I mean, really dark. And I was like, shoot, we didn't think about the fact it was going to be this dark. And I, got my phone out, and I told her, you should get your phone out. And then I said, we should also check to see if where we're going is actually open yet. Because I felt like 4 a.m. was the time in my head. I felt like it was really early. And some places, like if you live in New Jersey, there's like the 24-hour diner thing. But not necessarily. So I said, we should check to see if this, yeah, it's a great idea. And then I found that I was looking, and then I was like, okay, but I was also looking for other places that might be open. And the town I was looking for was Denville. And Denville is the town, okay, I have two associations with Denville. One, Denville is the town where I went to high school. Okay, I went to a private high school in Denville, Catholic high school. And it's also the last place I lived with my husband before we got divorced. And that was actually where I made the decision to get divorced. We lived, and it was the same street that my high school was on, a different branch of it, but it was the same street. And so that was interesting because for some reason, when we went outside, I thought we were in my current neighborhood, which is nowhere near Denville. But then I realized I was I was looking, I was like, and in fact, the direction we were walking would have been towards where the high school was. So, and she had nothing to do with the high school, by the way, my friend. She's somebody I knew. She actually lives like 2 or 3 towns over in a town called Wharton. And I had, so, there's like there's Denville, Rockaway, Dover, Wharton. They're all kind of in the same area. And there is actually, weirdly enough, there is actually a diner on that side too. There is something, the Hibernia is down that way. And a lot of people would cut school and that's where they would go. They'd go hang out at the Hibernia. But, fortunately I never did that because our Latin teacher always knew that people were going to do that, like on certain days, like especially if it was like snowy, she would, drive over there and she would catch like a whole bunch of seniors out having breakfast and they would be busted. Yeah, I never actually did that, but nonetheless, so after I woke up, I have my own method of dealing with dream work, and one of the things I use archetypal dream cards. And what was weird to me is that when I did that for this dream, when I pulled the images for this dream, the main theme of the dream that came up was Animus. And I thought, what does this have to do with the Animus? So if you don't know what the Animus is, okay, the Animus is in archetypal language, it is the name for I'm going to call it the female soul, but it's not really a soul. Okay, Animus is not the soul. Jung describes, the anima is described as a soul, and that is what men or people. When we live in a time of gender fluidity, I realize it's very sticky to just say, oh, what men have this and women have this, because obviously it's not quite like that. I think people who are men or who identify as men have this element of anima. Okay, or really, maybe more accurately, people who are attracted to women. Okay, if sexually people are attracted to women, then they have an anima because they're projecting that feminine image onto the object of desire. Okay, so whether you're male or female, and you are interested in women, then that would be the anima. If you are a woman who is interested in men, or if you're just even men who are interested in men, however that works, however that identity comes in, then you have what is known as the Animus. Now, the Animus does not function the same way as the anima. First of all, I think I should mention that they are when we talk about an archetype, that's a term that's very loosely used, and it's used in a lot of contexts. For instance, psychological archetypes are not the same as literary archetypes. You'll see people who do like marketing things and stuff going, oh, you're 7 archetypes. Like, those are not archetypes. Those are stereotypes. Those are not archetypes. Or they're just, they're like the Enneagram. There's some kind of like personality marker, but that's not what an archetype is. Because an archetype has nothing to do with your persona. It has nothing to do with the personality. Persona is a type of an archetype, I guess. But that has to do with your external facing and how people see you. Persona is from the word for mask. It's basically what you're showing people, whether that's authentically who you are or not, what you've chosen to identify with, what your career is, maybe who you've chosen to be involved with, in marriage or family or whatever decision you've made socially in terms of who you are is connected to persona. When we're talking about these other archetypes, when we're talking about animus archetypes, you're not talking about something, you're talking about something that's unconscious, okay? The term archetype, we always talk about it as being a constellation, okay? And that's a confusing term, but not really if you think about what an actual constellation is. So if you look up in the sky at a constellation, the constellations are they're collections of stars that make a picture, right? Like right now, well, not this second, but at night, I can see Orion out here, Scorpio's in front of my window, Canis Major is just under there. You know, they make pictures. One's a giant, one's a dog, one's a scorpion. You know, you have pictures, and they're made up of different stars. And those stars, in certain cases, the stars actually have a meaning that's relevant to the picture. So, for instance, Canis Major, which is the dog constellation, when the major star in that is Sirius, which is known as the dog star. Okay, so there's connections there between these things. So when we talk about an archetype constellation, we're talking about a collection of these kind of images and ideas that come together to form a unified picture. So when we talk about the anima as an archetype or the animus as an archetype, you're talking about a collection of images. Now, one of the things that I ended up picking up was the cards from this series that I use, like Anima and Animus, and what the different elements are of the constellation. So, like for the anima functions as the creative force within a man, or again, somebody who's attracted to women. And the elements of the anima, as I mentioned here, are the soulmate, the mother, and they say the whore, and then they say the daughter. Really what they mean is the virgin, because, there's the virgin whore axis. That's part of the archetype of the anima. And then, you have this idea of the person who is your soulmate, like the lover, and then there's the mother. The mother archetype, we tend to think of the mother as being separate, but it is part of that constellation, because mother would be the first feminine encounter for, somebody male or identifying that aspect that way. So mother would be the first feminine understanding of relationship to the feminine that somebody would have. The anima is more related to the relationship you would have when in your own love relationships or your own, potentially marriages or whatever. And in the anima is typically what inspires. As I teach in my love myth class, I said, okay, what happens when you fall in love with somebody? If let's just say you're a heterosexual man. Okay, let's just stick with that just for ease of discussion. And you see a woman and you are immediately attracted to that woman. There's chemistry. You fall in love. And this woman may or may not be, you may find that you have a type. Okay, you may look at somebody and have a type. But you also may be attracted to somebody who's not generally your type, okay? Somebody who might be different from that. Nonetheless, whoever you're attracted to has some quality of the anima, okay? It's basically, it's a projection. What you're seeing, it's almost like you're seeing your archetypes, and when you look at that person, it's like that's being mirrored back at you. However, that's just an image. The person you're attracted to is not the archetype. Okay, they're not. It's just that there's certain qualities that person has, whether they're physical qualities, whether that has to do with their personality, whether it's some other aspect of them that draws you in. Maybe you have similar backgrounds or stories or can relate to certain things. Whatever it is, there's something about that person that connects in with the archetype. So, and you are unaware because remember, we always talk about archetypes like, oh yes, I have this archetype. You don't know what your archetypes are. We don't know what they are. Jung even says, well, that's why you'll have, right, like he's written these long essays on the anima and animus, and nowhere does he define what either one of those things is, anywhere in that essay. Because it's almost like he dances around it. It's like, well, you kind of know what it is. It's like, well, no, actually we don't. But that's kind of the point. You don't know what it is. It's an image. It's a constellation. It's like a concept. And it's more like in the external world, it's like you know it when you see it. And it has an impact on you that is like, that catches you. You can't, extract yourself. So that's why falling in love is not a rational process, at least from this perspective. The idea is that because the archetype is now in play, it's constellated. It's gone from being unconscious, it's swung around, and now it's like, it's like in the sky. It's like, oh, now it's visible. Now it's in front of me. And when that happens, the impact on the psyche is huge. It's like an earthquake on the psyche because you are now caught up with this person. You might think about this person all the time. You might wonder if this person thinks about you. You might project your own feelings onto them. And you start looking at people and thinking like, oh, they looked at me a certain way. Did they actually think that way about me? You start doing weird stuff like that because of the attraction, right? You start doing things like that. And that's the way the archetype functions. But so you may fall in love with this. And if you happen to get together with said person, now this person has the potential to be inspirational to you. This person, has the potential, you have the potential to move beyond this kind of seduction or this kind of love relationship. A lot of times that's the first step to people falling in love and, maybe eventually, having a long-term committed partnership, whatever that is. But it often starts with that pull. And the anima, but the anima is like that, but the anima can have a dangerous side too, because the feeling is that this is where we get these ideas about the succubus and about these kind of sensual women who are dangerous, right? That's more like of a negative anima projection. Like Circe or Circe in the Greek mythology, she is someone who is, what's she do? Odysseus comes to her island and she turns his men into pigs, right? She's a sorceress. She does that. She's an anima figure. And it's when Hermes or Hermes intervenes with Odysseus and gives him the moly plant, okay? He gives him this plant. And so when Circe tries to put her spell on him, it doesn't work because it's the holy moly. Quite literally, that's where that comes from. It's the moly plant, and whatever it is, it wards her spell off. And so she takes a different tack, and then she tries to seduce him, which does work because he sleeps with her for like a year or something. And she does turn his men back into men from pigs, and then she ends up being his guide through the underworld. Okay, so that's really like the classic anima story in a way. It's like the anima can be dangerous to you, but if you know how to work with the anima, then the anima can aid you too. It can be your a creative figure. It can be a helper. But the anima is something that's really functions inside. I think it was one of the Jungians, Robert Johnson, I think, was talking about this. He had said a lot. He says more heartache comes because men, instead of working with the anima inside, men project her on the outside and then expect some woman to carry it for them. And no woman can carry the anima. It's just not possible. Just like a man can't carry a woman's animus. Now, the animus works differently. And this was also explained in this one really good documentary the BBC did on Jung. And I think you can see, I think you can find it on YouTube as Anima and Animus in Psychology. And I think is it John Beebe, I think was his name? He had done an analysis of, it was Alfred Hitchcock's Notorious, and talking about it as a drama of the Animus. And the way, because you have I'm forgetting the actress's name, but she comes out of a courtroom in this black and white film, and these reporters immediately come around her and start like grilling her and questioning her, because I guess her father's in court, and they're saying, well, do you think your father deserves penalty? Like going on this whole thing. And then you see her at this party, and she's talking to people, and she's talking to this man who's in shadow, kind of in the background, and you can't really see him. And the way she's looking at him and talking to him, he says, you can tell she's kind of half suspicious of him. Like, she doesn't know, is he a police officer? Is he this, is he that? But she's also half attracted to him. And then later on, the shot turns and you realize he's Cary Grant. So he's, of course, this, ideal of what I guess would have been ideal of, handsome man, at that time. And so she's kind of pulled in by him. So he says, but that's the drama of the Animus, because the Animus acts like a group of men who are judging. Okay, and I found this happens in women, and it also happens in gay men too. I've seen this happen, where the person is in a situation, and when there's somebody else who either they're attracted to, or like if it's a woman attracted to a man, then immediately the first line that you think of is kind of like, oh my God, does my hair look okay? Do I look okay? Am I this? Am I that? What does this person think about me? Are people gossiping about me? How's my reputation? How's this? How's that? Like, it's all this stuff that immediately comes in. And that's when Jung talks about the animus as being opinionated, that's what he means. He's not saying that women are opinionated and shouldn't have opinions. That's the way it almost comes across when it's translated from the German. Like, oh, women shouldn't even bother with the animus because it's so opinionated. It just makes them opinionated. I mean, it can turn somebody into now they use that term, the Karen. I guess people named Karen don't like that, but it can turn somebody into that, very self-righteous, very, very opinionated, very entitled. But that's the Animus talking through the woman. And Jung said it's not of any. The woman has a value of her own. She doesn't need that. So it's weird how. So that's why he doesn't really view the Animus as a soul. And one of the things that I was kind of learning from this dream was the idea of, I thought about the idea of animosity, okay? Because that is a word with its root in animus. Now, animus, again, means spirit. Platonic thinkers probably refer to it as mind, but, it's spirit. And when you talk about animosis, you're talking about somebody who's spirited, who's fiery, spirited, right? So animosity, being fiery, is actually a term that's associated with when you have great hatred for somebody. You have animosity towards somebody. And it was weird because after I woke up from that dream, I remember there were like two things immediately that were on my mind that I'm not going to explain because I don't want to get into any personal stuff. But one was kind of a mental diatribe against a person. And the other was more of a frustration or irritation with another person for other reasons. Both, and I realized, I'm like, why am I having this thought out of this dream? And because that's where the Animus is. And actually the woman who I was with, like in that dream, walking off to breakfast or wherever we were going, is somebody who also is, she is somebody who had told me, she says, I've spent my whole life being the dutiful wife, doing this, doing that. And she goes, and all I do is get dumped on, dismissed, ignored. I've had it with people. I'm not doing this anymore. Screw them. You have a problem. Tough crap. She got to be to that point. And whenever I talk with her, whenever we meet up, that's kind of where she, the frustration that she has with in-laws, with people in her own family, with the way people treat her. Oh, well, this is you, and as the good decorous wife, this is what you're supposed to do. And she's just like, fuck off. I'm not doing that anymore. And that's what she tells me. She goes, yeah, they don't like it. She goes, I don't care. But that's animosity. That's animosity. That's it right there. It's that kind of fiery response that we have. So we can think about the Animus as a projection of maybe, like in this movie, it's the Cary Grant type. It's a guy who's kind of shadowy, but at the same time very attractive, right? I talk about this, I think, in the podcast I did a long time ago, probably in 2019, on the Hanging Virgins. It's the idea of I talk a lot about the bad boy archetype, like Hades as the bad boy archetype or something like that, or Dionysus as the bad boy archetype. And there's an attraction to the bad boy. That this is the person your parents don't want you to be involved with. But when it comes to the Animus, and the Animus functioning as a group, it's like men who are passing a judgment on you. So one of the things they're passing judgment on is, are you behaving as a proper woman? If you are loud and outspoken, then that's not something that a proper woman does. If you like certain things or engage in certain things, my friend had been somebody who'd been very much into sports and stuff, and was kind of tomboyish, is how they called it. That was also, you make a lot of guy friends that way, but that was certain people. Well, that's just not the way girls behave. If you don't follow a certain life path, and it's interesting because a lot of that connects in with ideas about what we're calling the dark feminine, about that aspect of the feminine that's kind of pushed aside, dismissed, or seen as dangerous in some fashion. And I think what can rouse that is this. It actually kind of functions through the Animus, because because you see something that to you is just, you feel like is a blatant attack on you. And either one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to sit there and take it because, you don't want to make a fuss, or you're going to fight back at it. You're going to lash out. And in both ways, it's sort of like you're allowing yourself to be kind of defined and drained by that. But it's very hard to get out of that way of thinking. But I found myself, thinking a lot about this and thinking like, when I went to this school, one of the main things that happened at the high school where I went, When I was in that high school, when I was it was my junior year, because it was the beginning of 1989. And now Catholic high schools, this was a time, I don't know, those of you who are Catholic might remember back in the 80s, like the ideas of the Antioch groups and stuff, which were a load of horse shit, quite frankly. I mean, and it's funny because even the priests in the school where I went, one of the priests at the local church I had gone was one of the ones who had kind of started these whole Antioch groups where they'd get the teens together. And it was just, I never went to any of them. Even as somebody who was actually quite religious just before that, and then I became a heathen, and I kind of all fell to the wayside. But at the time, when I had been very, very devotedly Catholic, I still didn't go to these groups. Because even then, I kind of was like, and I remember there was one priest that we had, I think he taught 11th grade religion, and he was just like, yeah, he's like those Antioch groups. It's like where people get together and go, well, you had 19 abortions, well, this is what happened to me. And they just kind of go off on, like, it's like, it was like, what was that, that old TV show I think Dave Barry talked about called Queen for a Day, where it was like they would bring 3 women on, and whoever had the most pathetic life would win an Armada freezer or something. It was like, it kind of reminds me of that, because it's like basically like, how much drama can I create around myself? How much of a victim can I make about myself? So everybody will go, oh, we love you, we support you. But it's all fake. It's all dramatized. So it's kind of in this kind of environment when I was in this high school, and that was when my brother died. My brother died January 11th, 1989, and he was 22 years old, and he was suffering from AIDS complications. And I think pneumonia is what killed him in the end. I know he had suffered from MAI, which is like an intestinal form of tuberculosis. He was in a lot of pain. He was about 80 pounds. He was really sick. And of course, this was the 80s. So if you had AIDS, it was like, you were like a leper. And some irony to that, too, because, the idea of, if you read a lot through the Bible, like, there's a whole lot about, Jesus reaching out to the leper, but not these people. And I remember... because I had other classmates who had people who died in school, when they were in the school, that who had passed away, and they would always, somebody would get on the loudspeaker, oh, let's pray for so and so. And I don't care. I don't need anybody to pray for me. It doesn't really matter. But interestingly, when my brother died, literally nobody wanted to talk about it. Not only did nobody want to talk about it, this was right around the time we had midterm examinations, and I wasn't even given time off for midterms, which they did allow for other people who had losses, but not for me. In fact, they didn't even tell any of my teachers that anything happened, and I was later told, oh, well, we can't talk about that because And I know now. I know especially when they try to send me fundraising things, and, I'm tempted to send them back and explain to them why they're never going to get any kind of money from me for anything. I mean, never mind that I'm not going to be supporting a Catholic institution at this point, but also just, fuck off. I mean, I'm sorry. The hypocrisy of it just really... So I guess, okay, connecting back to my dream and connecting back to these people, because I don't go to high school reunions. I think I've been to one, and I think the only reason I went was because it was being held at a hotel that was literally right behind my office where I worked. Like, literally, I could walk from my office to this thing. And I was like, yeah, all right, I'll drop in. Maybe there'll be a couple people I want to see. Because there's maybe about, maybe 4 or 5 people from high school that I still actually want to talk to. The rest of them, I don't need to know these people. They don't live lives I can relate to. They can do whatever they want with their lives. But, I remember these were the people who I was in school with who were talking about how all AIDS victims should be taken to an island and then had it blown up. And I'm going to come back here and talk to you like you're a nice person. No, I'm going to tell you to shut your head up your arse. So but that's the animosity, you know what I mean? It's just, there's this anger that's there. And yeah, it's a justified anger, but at the same time, it's just, when you think about it, it's a response to the opinionated judgments of other people. It's a fight back at the opinionated judgments of other people. And the question then becomes, you obviously, I don't know. You don't always know what the right response to that is. But it kind of occurs to me, like that little voice that you have at night, if you go to sleep and you lay there and there's all these voices going, oh my God, you didn't do this, or you did that thing's stupid. Everybody does this in their head, right? This is something everybody does. And But to me, I feel like, at least for a lot of women, this is the voice of the Animus. This is the voice criticizing you, telling you everything that you didn't do right. And it does seem to have a connection also to the shadow, of course, because the shadow is everything that we are ashamed of and that we repress. But it's more like it's more like a drama between your Animus and your shadow. It's like a weird thing that goes on. But a lot of times, the way we end up expressing it is kind of explosively. So like I had said at the beginning, when we were talking, my friend who was visiting me, she was talking about this one mutual friend that we'd had that I dropped a long time ago, because of his statements about, women who had abortions. I'm not even going to get into the hypocrisy of what I was hearing there from this person, but I literally just said, if I talk to you about this, I'm going to go so nuclear, like your head's going to like blow off and you're not even going to know. Cause there's some things I'm very impassioned about, and I generally try to keep my temper in check about a lot of things. Because, that's why I have to stop and say, is it really worth saying what's on your mind about this? Which is why sometimes I think that's why I say it in my fiction. That's why sometimes my characters are very extreme, because there's certain things that I'm saying, but I'm like weighing how much I actually should say it. But even with not saying it, having any kind of a voice at all, is very intimidating to some people. I remember when I was department head at the last university where I worked before I basically retired from there. We would have meetings. We'd have meetings with vice presidents and provosts, and, as one of the directors, I would be there. And stuff would come up, and I don't tolerate sitting around a table and having, being asked to explain something and then having somebody just start talking over me like I'm not talking. I'm just like, excuse me, no, it's not your turn. Shut up. I don't necessarily put it in those terms, but I'm not shy about that. To me, I'm just like, excuse me, I have something, you asked me a question and I'm going to answer it before you say anything, and, or I would have people who would just do certain things, and they would be like, oh, I don't want to do this today. I'm like, yeah, well, I need it today. So you're doing it right now, and people would just, and I don't know, but a lot of times, I can be very, very diplomatic too. Most of the time I think I was diplomatic, but even being diplomatic, people were just kind of like, well, you're very direct, aren't you? I'm like, yeah, I why would I be indirect? But it's that strong kind of an energy, which is interesting because a lot of people, I think, associate it now. When I think about it being associated with the masculine, because I've talked about how I think the feminine is a very warlike thing. I think war as a concept is a feminine concept, not a masculine one, which I know shocks a lot of people, but I'm not going to get into the explanation of it now. But I do feel like a lot of that kind of fighting and blowback, it's almost like a way of like you're trying to either protect yourself, protect your voice, or protect your reputation in some way. And that's what I think of as animosity. And I feel like that dream was pointing out to me, like, okay, one of the things, I feel like I have a lot of things that are going really well in my life right now. My life is great, but it says, but you have this thing that keeps coming up, and that's your animosity. And so the question is, at what point do you let go of that? And at what point does that, yes, you can fight back against another person, but how much does that take out of you? And is it even worth your energy? So, at least some of the time. So yeah, I don't know. Interesting thought, about the place of that, but the way in which that's connected to Animus. And I just think that's something I hadn't really thought about before. But if you think about the Animus as being this kind of judging, judgmental kind of archetype that is part of the female experience, especially when females come into a relationship. And it doesn't just have to be love relationships. It can be other kinds of social settings. It can even be with other women. Because actually sometimes I think women are more judgy of other women than men are a lot of the times. You'll see that happen. And so the question is, like, yeah, where do you integrate the Animus in that? That's a really interesting and somewhat difficult kind of a question. So anyway, I'm at the hour, so I'm going to probably end this for now. Those of you who, everybody who joined, I see there's a long list of people who joined. Thank you guys so much. I'm very happy that all of you could be here and listen today. If you have any comments, I am going to obviously save the video and post it. So if you missed any part of it and want to catch the beginning or whatever, it'll be posted so you can watch the whole thing. I should also mention that what I've noticed is that sometimes in the Instagram posts, it'll do like the first 5 minutes of what I'm saying and then it cuts it off. But then if you double tap on it, it takes you into Reels and you can actually hear the whole thing. So if that's happened to you and you wanted to hear more, because I'll say, wait a minute, I was talking for an hour and you only heard 5 minutes of it? So, but no, you can, if you actually go into Reels, it'll take you there and then you can watch the whole video. So with that, I hope you guys have a really great week. I'll have some more updates, hoping to do a little more this week also with Patreon. If you're not part of my Patreon, it's patreon.com/Chthonia. So if you're interested in supporting any of my work, I do have some new members. In fact, I got to get out to the post office. I've got some more swag to mail out today to people. And I'm really grateful to all the people on Patreon who help support me, because that really is helpful towards me being able to do certain things on the Chthonia channel and on the podcast and with other stuff that I'm doing as well. So thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you next time.